His dead mother's ring was in his enemy's photograph. Caspian's hands shook so violently the photograph nearly slipped from his grip. That ring, that exact ring. A custom design his father commissioned 30 years ago. Rose gold, twisted into an infinity symbol, with a single sapphire at its center. The jeweler who created it died 15 years back. No replicas existed, no copies, no duplicates anywhere on Earth. Yet there it was, gleaming on a woman's finger in a photograph he had pulled from Dominic Mercer's desk drawer 3 days after Dominic's funeral. His mother's ring, on a hand he did not recognize, in a room he had never seen. His throat closed. His vision narrowed to that single point of light reflecting off the sapphire. Someone else had worn his mother's ring. Someone Dominic knew well enough to photograph. Someone connected to secrets his dead friend had never shared. But Dominic was gone now. A bullet through the temple in his own study. Ruled a suicide by detectives who spent less than 48 hours investigating. Case closed. File sealed. Questions buried alongside the body. Caspian had not believed the suicide ruling for a single second. He forced himself to study the image with clinical precision. His emotions could wait. The details could not. The room in the photograph was expensive. Crown molding, silk curtains, a 4-poster bed partially visible in the background. The kind of bedroom that belonged to old money. Real money. The kind that did not need to announce itself. He did not recognize the room, but he recognized the style. Every detail matched the aesthetic of families who moved in the same circles as the Ashfords. His circles, the world he had been born into and raised to navigate. The woman wearing the ring stood near a window. Her face was turned away from the camera, showing only the line of her jaw and the curve of her neck. Dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, a posture that communicated ease, familiarity. She belonged in that room. The ring caught the light from the window, rose gold and sapphire burning bright against her skin. Who was she? How had she obtained a ring that should have been locked in his mother's jewelry case? And why had Dominic kept this photograph hidden in a desk drawer rather than displayed on a shelf? Caspian flipped the photograph over. Nothing on the back. No date stamp. No photographer's mark. Just blank white space. He pulled out the second photograph. The one he had found tucked inside the same drawer, beneath a false bottom that Dominic had clearly installed himself. A different image entirely, decades older. The colors had faded to that particular yellow tint of aged film stock. A woman he did not recognize held a small child against her chest. The child's eyes were large and dark and carried an expression no child should wear. Not fear exactly. Something deeper, an awareness of danger that belonged to someone much older. Behind them stood a man. His face was partially obscured by shadow, but something about his stance sent an uncomfortable pulse of recognition through Caspian's body. The way he held his shoulders, the angle of his head, a posture Caspian had seen somewhere before, but could not place. Different time periods, different subjects, different locations. But Dominic had hidden both photographs together, in the same drawer, behind the same false bottom, which meant Dominic believed they were connected. 2 photographs. 2 pieces of a puzzle his dead friend had been assembling in secret. And someone had killed Dominic before he could show Caspian what the completed picture looked like. 3 days earlier, Dominic had called him. The conversation lasted 90 seconds. Dominic's voice carried a tension Caspian had never heard from him before. Not fear. Something past fear. The voice of a man who had looked at something he could not unsee. I need to show you something. Not over the phone. In person, tomorrow night. What is it about? Your family. Things I should have told you years ago. Things that will change everything you think you know. Dominic, just tell me. Not on this line, tomorrow, my study, 9 o'clock. Come alone and do not tell anyone you are coming, especially not Genevieve. Especially not Genevieve. His mother. Dominic was dead before tomorrow came, found by his housekeeper at 7 in the morning. Gun in his right hand. Entry wound at the right temple. A suicide note on his desk written in handwriting that matched his own. But Dominic was left-handed. Nobody else seemed to notice or care. Caspian laid both photographs on the desk in his apartment and stared at them under lamplight. Connections he could not yet see linked these images to each other and to Dominic's death. His friend had been gathering evidence, building a case, documenting something dangerous enough to get him killed. Your family. Things I should have told you years ago. What had Dominic discovered? What had he known for years and kept hidden? And who had learned that he was finally ready to talk? Caspian's phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. A text message. 3 lines. Meridian Storage, Unit 47. The key is taped behind Dominic's mailbox. What you find there will answer the ring. Ask Evany about Rosalind before you go further. You will need that name. Caspian read the message 3 times. Evany. The woman who had appeared in his life 3 years ago. The woman who vanished 8 months later without explanation. The woman who left behind nothing but a half-empty closet and the kind of absence that rewrites everything it touches. And Rosalind, a name that meant nothing to him. The sender assumed Evany would recognize it. Evany, who had disappeared. Evany, who had claimed to love him. Evany, whose past she never fully explained, now seemed designed to intersect with his in ways he was only beginning to understand. His jaw tightened. Everyone around him knew more than they revealed. 2 choices stood before him. Call his mother. Demand answers about the ring. Confront Genevieve with the photograph and watch her reaction. She would either explain everything or lie beautifully. Either way, he would learn something. Or go to Meridian Storage, follow the trail Dominic had left behind, walk directly into whatever his dead friend had been building before someone silenced him permanently. His thumb hovered over his mother's contact. Then he pocketed the phone. Genevieve had kept her secrets for decades. Another night would not matter. But whoever sent that message had a timeline, a purpose, a reason for reaching out now, in the immediate aftermath of Dominic's death. Someone wanted him to find what Dominic had hidden, and they wanted him to find it before anyone else could make it disappear. Caspian grabbed his keys. Dominic's townhouse sat dark and still behind crime scene tape that had already begun to peel from the doorframe. 3 days was apparently long enough for the authorities to lose interest in a rich man's suicide. Caspian parked 2 blocks away and walked. The neighborhood was quiet. Old trees lined the sidewalk, their branches skeletal against the November sky. His breath fogged in the cold air. The mailbox stood at the end of Dominic's front walk. A brushed steel rectangle mounted on a stone pillar. Caspian reached behind it, fingers searching the cold metal surface, until they found the small envelope taped to the back panel. Inside the envelope, a single key, brass, stamped with the number 47 and the Meridian Storage logo. Someone had planted this key knowing Caspian would come looking, knowing he would not accept the suicide ruling, knowing his loyalty to Dominic would override his caution. He pocketed the key and walked back to his car. Meridian Storage occupied a block of concrete buildings on the industrial east side. 24-hour access, no cameras in the hallways. The kind of place where people stored things they did not want found. Unit 47 was on the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled of dust and neglect. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, half of them dead, creating pockets of shadow between the metal doors. The key turned smoothly. The lock was new, recently installed. Someone had been maintaining this unit while everything else in the building deteriorated. Caspian pulled the door open. The unit was small, 8 by 10 feet. No windows. A single hanging bulb illuminated the space when he pulled the chain. A folding table stood in the center. On it, arranged with meticulous care, were documents, dozens of them, spread across the surface in groups held together by paper clips and rubber bands. Behind the table, leaning against the back wall, stood a corkboard, the kind used in detective shows and conspiracy documentaries. Photographs pinned to it, red string connecting faces to names to dates, handwritten notes in Dominic's cramped, left-handed script. Caspian stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The corkboard told a story. Dominic had been investigating the Ashford family for at least 15 years. The earliest documents were dated that far back: financial records, property transfers, medical documents, court filings that had been sealed and somehow unsealed. At the center of the board, connected to everything else by red string, was a name Caspian had never seen before: Rosalind Ashford. Beneath the name, a photograph, a woman's face staring directly into the camera. Caspian stopped breathing. He was looking at his mother. Not a resemblance, not a similarity, an exact duplicate of Genevieve Ashford's face. The same high cheekbones, the same sharp jaw, the same way her eyes caught light and reflected nothing of what lay behind them. But this woman's hair was darker, less silver, and the photograph was old, 20 years old at least, judging by the print quality. Pinned beneath the photograph, in Dominic's handwriting, twin sister. Committed to Willowbrook Psychiatric Hospital. Genevieve paid for silence, still alive as of last verification. Twin sister. His mother had a twin sister. A twin sister locked in a psychiatric hospital. A twin sister whose existence had been erased from every family record Caspian had ever seen. His hands found the edge of the table. He gripped it until his knuckles turned white. The documents on the table filled in what the corkboard outlined. Dominic had obtained records from Willowbrook Psychiatric Hospital, admission papers for Rosalind Ashford, dated 28 years ago, 3 weeks after Caspian's birth. The diagnosis was postpartum psychosis with delusional features. The commitment was signed by a Judge Arthur Webb, whose campaign finances, according to Dominic's notes, had received significant anonymous donations in the same month. A birth certificate was clipped to the admission papers. Mother, Rosalind Ashford. Father, Theodore Ashford. Baby boy Ashford. Born at 3:47 a.m., 7 pounds 4 ounces. Theodore Ashford. Caspian's father. The man who died when Caspian was 4 years old. The man Genevieve spoke of, with practiced grief. The birth certificate listed Rosalind as the mother, not Genevieve. Caspian read it again, then a third time. The words did not change. Dominic's handwritten note beside the certificate: Genevieve was never pregnant. Hospital records confirm. No prenatal visits, no delivery records. She took the baby from Rosalind within 72 hours of birth using falsified psychiatric evaluation. Emergency custody granted by Judge Webb. The room tilted. Caspian sat down on the concrete floor because his legs would no longer support him. Genevieve was not his mother, had never been his mother. The woman who raised him had stolen him from her own twin sister and locked that sister away for nearly 3 decades to keep the secret buried. Everything, every memory, every birthday, every conversation, every moment of his 28 years had been built on a theft committed in a hospital room before he was 3 days old. He sat on the storage unit floor for 11 minutes. He knew because he watched the time on his phone change. Each minute felt like an hour. Each breath required conscious effort. Then he stood up, wiped his face, and continued reading. Dominic's investigation went deeper than family secrets. Financial documents traced a network of payments from Genevieve to Willowbrook's board of directors. Annual donations disguised as charitable contributions. Enough money to ensure Rosalind's continued commitment without review. Enough to keep staff from asking questions. Enough to make a woman disappear in plain sight. Medical records showed Rosalind's treatment protocol. Heavy sedation, antipsychotic medications at doses that would impair cognitive function. Every time she mentioned having a son, the dosage increased. Every time she requested legal counsel, her privileges were restricted. Dominic had flagged one entry with a red circle. Year 8 of Rosalind's commitment. A visitor log showing Genevieve Ashford had come to the facility. Stayed for 20 minutes. Signed a check for continued treatment on her way out. She had visited her imprisoned sister, looked at what she had done, and paid to keep it going. Caspian's stomach turned. Beneath the financial documents, Dominic had compiled a separate file. This one was labeled in thick black marker, Ebony. Caspian's hands went still. The file contained surveillance photographs. Ebony entering a building he did not recognize. Evany meeting with a woman whose face was not visible. Evany on the phone, her expression serious in a way he had never seen during their time together. Dominic's notes were sparse but devastating. Evany Cordova, real name confirmed, recruited approximately 3 years before making contact with Caspian, recruited by Rosalind Ashford. Caspian read the line again. Recruited by Rosalind Ashford. Rosalind, the imprisoned twin sister. The woman locked away in a psychiatric hospital. But the dates did not work. If Rosalind was still committed, how could she recruit anyone? He flipped to the next page. Rosalind Ashford released from Willowbrook 6 years ago. New facility director reviewed case. Found irregularities, cleared for discharge. 6 years ago. Released. Free. And the first thing she had done with her freedom was build a weapon aimed directly at the family that destroyed her. Dominic's final note on the Evany file: I believe Evany's feelings for C became genuine. She stopped reporting to R approximately 18 months into the relationship. This is what made everything dangerous. When the asset stops following orders, everyone is at risk. The file ended there. No further notes, no conclusions. Just the raw materials of a truth Dominic had been assembling piece by piece for years. The truth he was going to share with Caspian the night someone put a bullet in his head. Caspian photographed every document, every page, every note and photograph and red string connection on the corkboard. He used his phone's camera methodically, ensuring nothing was missed. Then he returned everything to its exact position. If someone else knew about this unit, he wanted it to look untouched. He locked the door behind him and sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time. The facts assembled themselves in his mind with terrible clarity. Genevieve stole him from Rosalind at birth, imprisoned Rosalind for 28 years, built the Ashford legacy on a foundation of kidnapping and false identity. Rosalind escaped 6 years ago, recruited Evany as an operative, sent her to infiltrate Caspian's life. Evany's mission changed. She fell in love, stopped reporting, became a liability to Rosalind's plan. Dominic discovered all of it, spent 15 years building the evidence file, was murdered the day before he planned to reveal everything to Caspian. And someone was now guiding Caspian through the breadcrumbs Dominic left behind. Who? Not Rosalind. She would not direct him to evidence that exposed her own manipulation of Evany. Not Genevieve. She would never risk the secrets surfacing at all. Someone else. A third player who knew everything and served no one's agenda but their own. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Same as before. Now you know the foundation. If you want to find Evany and understand why she really left, Harbour Avenue Warehouse, Pier 7, tomorrow night, midnight. Come alone. Caspian stared at the message. Evany had disappeared 2 years ago. 8 months into their relationship. No note, no call, no explanation. Just absence. He had spent 6 months looking for her before accepting she was gone. He told himself she had simply left, that whatever they had was not strong enough to hold her. Now he knew the truth was something else entirely. She had been running. But from what? From Rosalind's orders? From Genevieve's threats? From the impossible position of loving someone she had been sent to deceive? Harbour Avenue, Pier 7, tomorrow night. He would be there. Caspian spent the next day doing something he had never done before. He investigated his own mother, not Rosalind, not the biological stranger whose face he had only seen in photographs. He investigated Genevieve, the woman who made him breakfast every Sunday morning until he left for college, the woman who taught him to read financial statements before he could drive a car, the woman who held his hand at Theodore's funeral and told him they would be strong together. He started with public records, property holdings, corporate filings, board memberships, the visible architecture of Genevieve Ashford's life. Everything checked out. Everything always checked out with Genevieve. She built her world the way she built her appearance. Flawless on the surface, every seam hidden, every edge polished until it reflected back exactly what the observer expected to see. But Dominic's files had given him new eyes. He knew where to look now, what to look for. The specific kind of gap that appears when someone has been erasing a person from the record for 3 decades. No twin sister listed in any family document. No mention of Rosalind in obituaries, wedding announcements, society pages. The Ashford family history presented Genevieve as an only child, born to Harold and Catherine Ashford, raised in Connecticut, educated at Bryn Mawr, married Theodore Ashford at 24, a complete biography with a person-shaped hole cut out of it. He found one crack. A photograph in a 1987 Society magazine. A charity gala. The caption read, "Ashford Sisters at the Children's Hospital Benefit." Two young women in evening gowns, identical faces turned toward the camera, smiling smiles that had not yet learned to hide anything. The magazine had been digitized by a university archive. Someone had tried to have the image removed. The removal request was denied because the archive had a preservation policy that prevented deletion of historical materials. One photograph, one caption. Proof that Rosalind Ashford had existed before Genevieve made her disappear. He also called the only person he trusted enough to ask for help. Marcus Chen had been his attorney for 6 years. Before that, Marcus had been his roommate at Columbia. Before that, Marcus had been the kid who sat next to him in 9th grade biology and spent an entire semester lending Caspian pencils without being asked. 20 years of friendship purchased a particular kind of loyalty, the kind that survived phone calls that began with, "I need you to do something," without asking why. "I need you to pull sealed court records from 28 years ago, a custody case, Judge Arthur Webb presiding. The respondent's name is Rosalind Ashford." Marcus was silent for 4 seconds. Caspian counted. "Ashford, as in your family?" "Yes." "You said without asking why." "I did." "Right." Marcus exhaled. "Give me until tomorrow afternoon, and Caspian, whatever this is, be careful." Caspian hung up. Careful was no longer an option available to him. He spent the rest of the afternoon reading Dominic's notes on Evany. The file was thin. Dominic had been cautious about documenting her, as if he understood that putting too much on paper created danger for everyone involved. But what he had written carried the precision of someone who had watched carefully and recorded only what mattered. Evany Cordova, born in Seattle. Parents deceased. Father died when she was 12. Mother when she was 14. Foster care until 18. 2 years of instability after aging out of the system. Shelters, temporary jobs, the kind of survival that leaves marks invisible to people who have never experienced it. Rosalind found her at 20. The details of their first meeting were not recorded, only the result. Rosalind offered education, resources, purpose. Evany accepted. The transformation took 3 years. Dominic's notes became more detailed once Evany entered Caspian's orbit. R positioned E at the Eastside Community Shelter, knowing C volunteers there on alternating Thursdays. First contact appeared organic. E presented as a volunteer. C initiated conversation. E responded with calibrated warmth, not too eager, not too distant, precisely the frequency C responds to. Caspian closed his eyes. He remembered that first conversation. Evany in the shelter kitchen, wearing a faded blue sweater, looking up when he walked in. The way she smiled, not at him specifically, at something a child had said. He noticed her because she was not trying to be noticed. Except she was, every detail calculated, every moment rehearsed. Dominic's notes continued. By month 3, E's reports to R became irregular. Content shifted from intelligence gathering to personal observations about C's character. Month 5, E requested permission to end the operation. R denied. Month 6, E stopped reporting entirely. R sent 2 intermediaries to re-establish contact. E refused both. Month 6. Caspian remembered month 6. That was when Evany started staying overnight, when the conversation shifted from careful to careless, when she stopped watching her words and started saying things that surprised even her. He had thought he was watching a woman let her guard down. He had been watching a woman abandon her mission. Month 8, E discovered she was pregnant, informed R, who instructed her to continue the relationship and use the pregnancy to deepen access to the Ashford family. E refused, severed all contact with R. pregnant. Caspian read the word, and the room went silent around him. 2 weeks later, E disappeared from C's life without explanation. I believe she ran to protect the child from both R and G, current location unknown. Ebony had not left because she stopped loving him. She left because she was pregnant with his child, and the two women fighting over the Ashford legacy would have turned that child into another weapon. She ran to protect their baby. Caspian pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw white. Somewhere in the world, he had a child he had never met. A child Ebony had been raising alone for 2 years because every other option was worse. Night came slowly. Caspian arrived at Harbour Avenue 40 minutes early. He parked 6 blocks from Pier 7 and walked the rest of the way on foot, using the rows of shipping containers as cover. The industrial district was exactly what he expected. Abandoned, dark. The kind of place chosen specifically because no witnesses would be present and no one would hear anything that happened inside. He had spent the afternoon preparing. Not with weapons. He did not own a gun and had never fired one, but with information. Every document from Dominic's storage unit was now backed up in 3 separate locations. Marcus had copies. A sealed envelope sat in Caspian's office safe. A third copy existed on an encrypted drive mailed to an address only Caspian knew. If something happened to him tonight, the truth would surface regardless. The warehouse at Pier 7 loomed against the night sky. 4 stories of corrugated steel and shattered windows. A faded sign hung above the main entrance. Meridian Shipping Company, dead for 20 years. He circled the building once, found a service entrance on the east side. The padlock had been cut recently. Bright metal shone where bolt cutters had done their work. Someone had prepared this entrance, which meant someone was already inside. Caspian pressed his back against the wall. Listened. Nothing but fog and distant harbour sounds. He opened the door and stepped through. The warehouse interior smelled of rust and salt water. Broken conveyor belts crossed the concrete floor. Wooden pallets lay scattered and rotting. Moonlight fell through gaps in the roof, creating silver pools of visibility surrounded by darkness. His footsteps echoed despite his careful placement. The sound bounced off distant walls and returned multiplied, as if others walked alongside him in the shadows. He stopped in the center of the ground floor, an open space where the moonlight was strongest, visible from every angle. Exposed, he chose the position deliberately. He was done hiding, done being guided through dark corridors by people who knew more than he did. If someone wanted to meet him, they could meet him here, in the light. You came alone. The voice came from above. A woman. It echoed off the walls, making precise location difficult, but the general direction was clear. The catwalk system that crisscrossed the upper levels. I came with questions, Caspian replied. If you have answers, come down here and give them to me. Soft laughter, not cruel, almost sad, direct like Theodore. A pause. Did you find what Dominic left for you? You already know I did. You sent me to the storage unit. I sent you to the truth. What you do with it is your choice. It always has been. Footsteps on metal grating. She was moving, descending. Who are you? I think you already know. She descended the metal staircase slowly. First her shoes, simple black heels, then the hem of a dark coat, then her hands on the rusted railing, then her face. Caspian had prepared himself for this moment. He had seen the photograph on Dominic's corkboard. He knew about the twin sister. He understood intellectually what he was about to see. None of that preparation mattered. She was Genevieve, and she was not Genevieve. The same architecture of bone and skin, reproduced with biological precision. But the details diverged in ways that spoke of entirely different lives lived inside identical frames. Her hair was longer, streaked with grey she had not bothered to disguise. Lines cut deeper around her eyes. Not the lines of someone who frowned often, but of someone who had spent years squinting under fluorescent lights in rooms without windows. Her posture carried a different weight. Not the practiced elegance of society events. Something harder, earned through endurance rather than inheritance. She wore a single piece of jewelry, a ring on her right hand, rose gold, infinity symbol, sapphire. His mother's ring. No, his real mother's ring. The ring that had never belonged to Genevieve at all. "Hello, Caspian." Her voice cracked on his name. "My name is Rosalind Ashford, and I have waited 28 years to say that to your face." The warehouse seemed to contract around them, the vast space shrinking to the distance between two people who should have known each other for a lifetime and were meeting for the first time. "I read Dominic's files," Caspian said. His voice was steady. He had cried in the storage unit. He had processed the shock in his apartment. He had driven here with his grief already metabolized into something harder, something he could use. "I know what Genevieve did to you. The commitment, the falsified diagnosis, the judge she bought." Rosalind's expression shifted, surprise that he already knew, then something like relief. Dominic was thorough. He was murdered for being thorough. A shadow crossed her face. "Yes, he was." "Did you kill him?" "No." The word came out sharp, definitive. "Dominic reported to me for 15 years. He was my only window into the life my son was living without me. Why would I destroy that?" "Then who killed him?" "Someone who discovered what he was about to tell you. Someone with the resources to stage a convincing suicide and the connections to ensure a superficial investigation." Rosalind met his eyes. "I suspect you already know who." He did. The knowledge sat in his chest like a stone. But suspecting and confirming were different things, and he was not ready to say his mother's name in that context. Not yet. "Tell me about Ebony." Rosalind's expression changed again. Complicated emotion moved beneath the surface. "Ebony is the part of this story I am least proud of." She moved to a rusted support beam and leaned against it. The posture made her look tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "When I was released from Willowbrook, I had nothing. No money, no identity, no connections. 22 years of imprisonment had erased me from the world more thoroughly than Genevieve ever could have through legal means." "How did you rebuild?" "Carefully, slowly. A nurse named Clara helped me in the beginning. She had been the one who flagged the irregularities in my file. She gave me a place to stay while I re-established my legal identity, found me work, helped me access funds from accounts Genevieve had not discovered." "And then you started planning?" "Not immediately. The first 2 years I simply tried to exist, to remember how to be a person after spending half my life being told I was not one." Her jaw tightened. "But then I found a photograph of you in a magazine, a business profile, 26 years old, running the Ashford Foundation, smiling at the camera with Genevieve standing beside you." She paused. "You had her last name, her home, her world. You called her mother and meant it. And something inside me broke in a different way than Willowbrook had broken me. So you decided to take me back." "I decided to take back the truth, whatever that required. I found Ebony through a shelter network Clara connected me to. She was 20 years old, alone, brilliant, and so desperately hungry for someone to tell her she mattered that she would have followed anyone who offered purpose." Rosalind's voice carried a weight that sounded like genuine regret. "I am not going to pretend what I did was kind. I identified a vulnerable young woman and I shaped her into a tool. I gave her education, language training, social conditioning. I taught her to read rooms and manipulate conversations and become whatever the situation required." "You weaponized her loneliness." "Yes. No deflection, no excuse. I told myself it was necessary, that the cause justified the method, that exposing Genevieve required sacrifices and Ebony was willing to make them. Was she willing, or did she simply have no better option?" Rosalind said nothing for a moment. The silence was its own answer. "When I sent her to you, I expected a clean operation. 6 months. Gather information about the Ashford family's vulnerabilities, document Genevieve's hidden activities, build a case I could take to authorities." But she fell in love. She fell in love. Rosalind confirmed it like a doctor confirming a diagnosis. And I failed to account for that possibility because I had spent 22 years in a place where love was not a variable anyone calculated. She stopped reporting to me at month 6, refused contact with my intermediaries, essentially went rogue inside the operation I had designed. Dominic's notes said you told her to use the pregnancy to deepen access. Rosalind flinched. It was small, controlled, but unmistakable. Yes, when she told me she was pregnant, I saw strategic value, a grandchild, an Ashford heir born outside Genevieve's control, leverage I could use when the time came. You treated your own grandchild as a bargaining chip. I treated the situation the way Genevieve taught me to treat everything, as a transaction. Her voice dropped. 22 years in that hospital did not just take my freedom, Caspian, it took pieces of my humanity. I learned to think like the woman who put me there because thinking any other way meant I would not survive. She straightened against the beam. Ebony was wiser than me. She looked at the situation and saw what I refused to see, that every person involved, you, me, Genevieve, would use that child as ammunition in a war the child had no part in, so she did the only thing that guaranteed the baby's safety. She disappeared. She severed contact with me, left you without explanation, and vanished so completely that neither I nor Genevieve could find her for 2 years. But someone found her. Yes, 3 weeks ago, Genevieve's people located her. Dominic's death set off a chain of events. Investigators following leads from his files stumbled across connections that pointed toward Evany's new identity. Genevieve moved quickly once she had a location. Where is Evany now? Rosalind's face tightened. That is why I brought you here tonight. Genevieve has her. The words landed in the silence between them like a dropped blade. 3 days ago, the same day you found Dominic's photographs, Genevieve's people took Evany from the apartment she had been renting under a false name in Portland. The child was at school when it happened. Child. Caspian's voice came out hollow. Boy or girl? A boy. His name is Stellan. He is 2 years old. 2 years old. Walking, talking, forming memories, learning the world. And Caspian had missed every single moment. Where is Stellan now? Safe. I had people watching Evany even though she refused contact with me. When Genevieve's team moved on the apartment, my people collected Stellan from his daycare before anyone else could reach him. You have my son. I am protecting your son. There is a difference. From where I stand, 2 women have been fighting over Ashford children for 3 decades, and my son is now caught in the middle of the same war. That does not look like protection. That looks like history repeating. Rosalind absorbed the accusation without flinching. You are right, which is why I am telling you everything tonight instead of continuing to operate in the shadows. Dominic's death changed the calculus. The investigation into his murder is creating pressure that will eventually crack open every secret all of us have been keeping. She stepped away from the beam. We have a narrow window, days, not weeks. Either we control how the truth emerges, or Genevieve controls it. And if Genevieve controls it, she will bury Evany the same way she buried me. What exactly are you proposing? Caspian kept his voice level. Every instinct told him to demand his son's location immediately, to call the police, to tear the city apart until he held Stellan in his arms. But instinct was what people like Genevieve and Rosalind exploited. They counted on emotional reactions, on desperate decisions made without full information. He would not give either of them that advantage. The documents Dominic compiled are comprehensive, but they are not sufficient for criminal prosecution on their own. Sealed court records, payments that could be explained as charitable donations. Medical files obtained through questionable means. A good attorney would suppress half of it before trial. You need Genevieve to confess. I need Genevieve to make a mistake. She has been perfect for 28 years. Perfect mothers do not get investigated. Perfect philanthropists do not get questioned. Perfect widows do not get suspected. But desperate ones do. Rosalind nodded slowly. Genevieve is holding Evany because Evany represents a threat she cannot eliminate quietly, a living witness who knows about the stolen baby, a woman who can testify, about being recruited to infiltrate the Ashford family, a mother whose missing child will generate exactly the kind of public attention Genevieve cannot afford. She would not hurt Evany. She kept me in a psychiatric hospital for 22 years, Caspian. She paid doctors to drug me into compliance. She visited once to confirm her handiwork and signed a check on her way out. Rosalind's voice went flat. Do not tell me what Genevieve would and would not do. You do not know her. You never have. The truth of that statement cut deeper than anything else she had said all night. Here is what I am asking. Rosalind reached into her coat and withdrew a phone. Not her own. A burner. Prepaid. Untraceable. Genevieve does not know you have found Dominic's files. She does not know you have been to the storage unit. She does not know you are standing in this warehouse with me right now. How can you be sure? Because if she knew, she would have acted already. Genevieve does not wait. She does not observe and calculate when her survival is at stake. She moves. She has always moved first. Rosalind held out the phone. Call her. Tell her you have been going through Dominic's personal effects and found something concerning, a photograph, a name you do not recognize. Tell her you are confused and frightened and need her guidance. You want me to play the ignorant son. I want you to give her the opportunity to lie to your face, and when she does, I want you to be wearing a wire. Caspian stared at the phone in her outstretched hand. That is your plan. Get Genevieve on tape denying Rosalind's existence, denying the stolen custody, denying everything, and then present the recordings alongside Dominic's evidence to create an undeniable case. Genevieve's power comes from her reputation. Her word against mine means nothing. I am the sister who was committed, the unstable one, the woman with a psychiatric history that discredits everything I say. Rosalind's jaw tightened. But Genevieve's word against her own recorded lies? That is something even her attorneys cannot explain away. And Evany? Once Genevieve is exposed, she loses the power to hold Evany. She loses the power to threaten anyone. The entire structure collapses. You are asking me to betray the woman who raised me. I am asking you to save the woman who loves you, and the son you have never met. Caspian looked at the burner phone, then at Rosalind, then at the warehouse walls that had witnessed more truth in one night than his entire life had contained. He took the phone. He did not call Genevieve that night. Instead, he drove to Marcus Chen's apartment at 2 in the morning and told him everything. Not some of it. Not the carefully edited version he might have offered a less trusted friend. Everything. The twin sister. The stolen baby. The psychiatric imprisonment. Evany. Stellan. Dominic's murder. The warehouse meeting. Rosalind's plan. Marcus listened without interrupting. A lawyer's discipline. He sat in his kitchen in a bathrobe, drinking coffee that grew cold in his hands. His face cycling through expressions that ranged from disbelief to fury to something that looked like fear. When Caspian finished, Marcus set down his coffee. You need to understand something. If even half of this is true, Genevieve Ashford is not just a bad person. She is a criminal. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice. And if she had Dominic killed, we are talking about murder. I know. You also need to understand that Rosalind's plan has significant risks. Recording conversations without consent is illegal in this state. Any evidence obtained through a wire could be suppressed. And if Genevieve discovers what you are doing before you have enough material, she will destroy everything, including you. I know that too. Marcus rubbed his face. What do you want me to do? I want you to contact the district attorney's office, quietly. Through channels Genevieve cannot monitor. I want to know if there is a way to do this, legally, a proper investigation, warrants, immunity agreements if necessary, something that builds a case strong enough to survive Genevieve's legal team. That will take time. Then we need to move fast. Genevieve has Evany, Rosalind has Stellan, and I am standing in the middle with nothing but a dead friend's research and a phone that could either save everyone or destroy everything. Marcus nodded. Slowly, the nod of a man accepting a situation he would never have chosen but refusing to walk away from. I will make calls in the morning. Stay away from Genevieve until you hear from me. Do not use the wire. Do not contact Rosalind. Do not do anything except go home and pretend everything is normal. Normal. I know, but right now, normal is the only armor you have. Caspian did not sleep. He sat in his apartment with the lights off, watching the city through his windows. Seattle at 3 in the morning was a different creature than the city he navigated during daylight hours. Quieter, honest in its emptiness, the buildings stood without pretense, their windows dark, their purposes suspended until morning restored the performance. He thought about Stellan, 2 years old, dark eyes, if he had inherited Evany's, or light, if the Ashford genes had won that particular lottery, walking now, maybe running, saying words that Caspian had never heard, reaching for hands that were not his father's, because his father did not know he existed. He thought about Evany, 8 months together, the longest and shortest relationship of his life. He remembered the way she laughed. Not the first time, which Dominic's notes told him was rehearsed, but the time 3 months in, when he told a terrible joke about tax law and she laughed so hard she spilled wine on his couch. She had been mortified. He had been delighted. Nobody manufactured that kind of embarrassment. Dominic was right. Somewhere between the performance and the truth, Evany had become real. And when she became real, she did the only thing a real person could do in an impossible situation. She ran. Not from him, for their child. He thought about Genevieve. Sunday breakfasts, the way she cut his toast into triangles until he was 12 years old, because he mentioned once, at age 4, that triangles tasted better. The sound of her voice reading him stories about knights and castles. The particular way she squeezed his shoulder when she was proud of something he had done. Small gestures accumulated over a lifetime, thousands of them, each one genuine in the moment, even if the foundation beneath them was stolen. Could you love someone and have that love be real if everything that brought you together was built on a crime? He did not know. He suspected he would spend the rest of his life not knowing. Marcus called at 9 the next morning. I reached someone, Assistant Dar named Rivera. She is careful, smart, and she does not leak. She has agreed to an off-the-record conversation this afternoon. No commitments, no formal complaints filed, just a preliminary assessment of what we have and what we would need. How much did you tell her? Enough to get the meeting, not enough to compromise anything. She knows a prominent family is involved and that there are allegations of serious crimes spanning decades. She does not know names yet. When and where? 3 o'clock, her office. I will be there with you. Caspian exhaled. The first proactive step. The first moment since Dominic's funeral, where he felt like he was moving forward instead of being moved. One more thing, Marcus said. His voice dropped. I did some research on Judge Arthur Webb, the one who signed the emergency custody order. And? He died 11 years ago, heart attack at 67. Nothing unusual about the death itself, but his estate records show something interesting. He received payments from a trust called Ashford Family Charitable Foundation every year for 15 years. The payments stopped the year he died. Genevieve was paying the judge. For a decade and a half after the ruling, that is not a one-time bribe, that is ongoing silence money. Rivera is going to find that very interesting. The pieces continued to assemble, each one making the picture clearer and more damning. The meeting with Rivera lasted 2 hours. She was exactly what Marcus described. Careful, intelligent. Her office was sparse. No personal photographs, no decorative items, just case files, legal texts, and a desktop computer that looked 5 years past replacement. She listened to Caspian's account the way she probably listened to every account that crossed her desk, with attention that gave nothing away. No shock, no sympathy, no judgment, just absorption. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair. What you are describing, if substantiated, involves criminal conduct across multiple jurisdictions spanning nearly 3 decades, kidnapping, false imprisonment, fraud upon the court, bribery of a judicial officer, potentially conspiracy to commit murder. Can you investigate? I can open a preliminary inquiry based on what you have shown me. The documents from the storage unit are problematic, chain of custody issues, questions about how they were obtained, but they point toward evidence that can be obtained through proper channels. She tapped her pen against the desk. Hospital records can be subpoenaed. Court filings can be unsealed with a judicial order. Financial records can be compelled through investigation. If what you are telling me is true, the evidence exists in systems that Genevieve Ashford does not control, no matter how much money she has. How long? Weeks, not days. This has to be built correctly, or it collapses in court and she walks away cleaner than before. I do not have weeks. She has someone, a woman named Ivany Cordova, taken 3 days ago. Rivera's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in her professional neutrality. If there is a kidnapping victim, that changes the timeline. I can coordinate with law enforcement for an immediate welfare check if you can provide a location. I do not have a location. That is the problem. Rivera looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Caspian. The silence held the weight of everything they could not yet do. Find me a location, Rivera said, and I will have a team there within the hour. Caspian left the DA's office with 2 competing imperatives. Find Ivany, and do not alert Genevieve. The first required action. The second required patience. The combination felt like holding fire and ice in the same hand. He sat in his car outside the courthouse and called Rosalind on the burner phone she had given him. She answered on the first ring. Caspian, I am not using the wire. I have gone to the DA's office. There is an assistant prosecutor willing to build a case through proper legal channels. Silence stretched for 5 seconds. That is not what we discussed. What we discussed was your plan. This is mine. The DA needs a location for Ivany. You have resources. People watching Genevieve. Can you find where she is being held? More silence. He could hear Rosalind calculating, adjusting, rearranging her strategy around this new variable she had not anticipated. Genevieve owns 11 properties in Washington state alone. 3 of them are not listed under her name. Shell companies, trusts, the kind of ownership designed to be invisible. Which 3? A house in Bellevue registered to a trust called Thornfield Holdings, a commercial property in Tacoma under Ashford Family Services, and a residential estate 40 minutes north of the city, registered to something called Meridian Enterprises. Meridian, the same name as the shipping company on the warehouse, the same name as the storage facility. Genevieve likes the name Meridian, Rosalind said, reading his silence. It was our mother's maiden name. She uses it when she wants to hide something close to her heart. The estate. Tell me about it. 12 acres, gated, private road, built in the 1990s as a retreat property. Genevieve goes there when she wants to disappear from society for a few days. No staff on record, but the property has active utility accounts and regular maintenance contracts. That is where Ivany is. I believe so, but I cannot confirm. My people have not been able to get close enough to verify without risking detection. Caspian memorized the address Rosalind provided. One more thing. Stellan, my son, where is he? Rosalind paused. He is safe, Caspian. That is not what I asked. I know, but until Genevieve is neutralized, Stellan's location is the only leverage I have, not against you, against the situation. You are using my son as a bargaining chip, again. I am keeping him alive. When this is over, you will have him back. I promise you that. Your promises do not carry much weight right now. I know that too. Her voice softened. But they are all I have. He ended the call, stared at the address on the burner phone screen. 40 minutes north, 12 acres, gated, where Genevieve hid the things she wanted to keep. He called Marcus. I have a possible location for Ivany, a property registered to Meridian Enterprises. It is connected to Genevieve. How did you get this? Rosalind. Marcus exhaled sharply. You understand that acting on intelligence from Rosalind is complicated. She has her own agenda. She could be sending you into a trap. She could be using you to do something she cannot do herself. I know, but Rivera said she needs a location. This is the best lead I have. Let me take it to Rivera. She can coordinate with local law enforcement, a welfare check on the property, legal, documented. If Ivany is there, they extract her through proper channels. If she is not, we have not tipped our hand. How fast? If Rivera moves on it today, potentially tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. Tonight, tomorrow morning. Hours that felt like years when someone you cared about was being held against their will by someone capable of anything. Tell Rivera to move fast. I will. And Caspian, stay away from that property. Do not go there yourself. Do not do anything that gives Genevieve a reason to escalate. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. I will try. Do not try. Succeed. Everything depends on doing this the right way. Marcus hung up. Caspian sat in the parking lot, staring north toward a gated estate 40 minutes away, where the mother of his child might be waiting for someone to come. He did not go to the estate. He wanted to. Every nerve in his body wanted to. The primal urgency of it sat in his chest like a caged animal, throwing itself against bars. Someone he loved was in danger, and the address was right there on his phone, and he had a full tank of gas and 40 minutes of highway between him and answers. But Marcus was right. Showing up alone at Genevieve's private estate accomplished nothing except alerting her that the game had changed. She would move evenly, destroy evidence, activate whatever contingency plans a woman with 3 decades of criminal experience kept in reserve. Patience, the hardest kind. The kind that required trusting other people to do what you desperately wanted to do yourself. He went home instead, sat in his apartment, watched his phone, waited for Marcus or Rivera to call with news. The hours crawled. At 6 in the evening, his phone rang. Not Marcus, not Rivera. Not the burner phone, his personal phone. The contact name on the screen sent ice through his veins. Mom. Genevieve was calling. He let it ring 4 times. Each ring was a decision point. Answer and perform normalcy. Decline and raise suspicion. He answered. Caspian, darling. Her voice was warm, perfectly warm, the exact temperature of maternal affection she had maintained for 28 years. I have not heard from you since Dominic's funeral. I wanted to check on you. I am fine, just processing. Of course you are. Dominic was dear to you. Losing someone so suddenly is always difficult. A pause calibrated to communicate empathy. Have you been eating? You forget to eat when you are stressed. The intimacy of the question nearly broke him. She knew he forgot to eat when stressed because she had watched him do it for decades. Because she had made him soup during exams and left sandwiches on his desk during difficult business negotiations. Because she had been his mother in every way that daily life measured. And she had stolen that right from someone else. I have been going through some of Dominic's things. His family asked me to help organize his personal effects. He kept his voice casual, slightly tired. The voice of a grieving friend performing an unpleasant but necessary task. That is kind of you, though I hope you are not spending too much time dwelling. Dominic would not want you to spiral. Actually, I found something odd. A photograph. It looks like it might be from a family event years ago. There is a woman in it I do not recognize. Silence on the line. 2 seconds. 3. A photograph of what, exactly? A woman wearing a ring that looks identical to the one Dad gave you, the rose gold infinity design, but the woman is not you, at least I do not think it is. 5 seconds of silence now. An eternity in Genevieve's conversational rhythm, where every pause was measured and every silence meant something. Dominic collected all sorts of things, darling. He was sentimental. It is probably a photograph from a jeweler's catalogue. Your father's ring design was inspired by an existing piece. You told me it was custom. One of a kind. Did I? I may have romanticized the story over the years. Memory does that. A light laugh. Practiced. Throw it away, Caspian. It is not important. She was lying. He could hear it now. Not in her tone, which was flawless, not in her words, which were perfectly chosen, but in the gap between what she said and what she did not say. The questions she did not ask. A normal person would ask to see the photograph, would be curious, would want to solve the small mystery. Genevieve wanted it to disappear. You are probably right, he said. I will toss it. Good. Now, I want you to come to dinner this week. Thursday, I will make the lamb you like. Thursday sounds good. Wonderful. I love you, darling. I love you too, Mom. He hung up, stared at his phone. The words, I love you, echoed in the silence of his apartment, and he could not tell whether they were true or whether truth even mattered anymore in a family built entirely on its absence. 20 minutes later, Marcus called. Rivera has the warrant. Law enforcement is moving on the Meridian property tonight, 9 o'clock. She wants you and me at her office by 8, so we are in communication when the team goes in. Caspian closed his eyes. I will be there. One more thing. Rivera pulled the property records for Meridian Enterprises. The trust was established 30 years ago, 1 year before you were born, and the original trustee listed on the documents is not Genevieve. Who? Theodore Ashford, your father. Caspian absorbed that. Theodore created the trust. Genevieve took control of it after his death through her authority as your guardian. But the original purpose of the trust, according to the founding documents, was to provide financial support for a dependent named Rosalind Ashford. His father had created a trust for Rosalind, to take care of her, and Genevieve had hijacked it after Theodore died, converting a support structure into a hiding place. Everything his father built to protect one woman, Genevieve had turned into a weapon against her. 8 o'clock, Caspian said. I will be there. Rivera's office felt different at night. The fluorescent lights gave everything a slightly blue cast. The hallways of the courthouse were empty except for security guards and cleaning staff. Footsteps echoed in ways they never did during business hours. Caspian and Marcus sat across from Rivera's desk. A laptop displayed a satellite image of the Meridian estate. 12 acres of forested property, a main house, 2 outbuildings, a single access road through a gated entrance. Rivera was on the phone with the tactical team leader. Her voice was calm, precise, professional. The voice of someone who had done this before and understood that precision saved lives. Team is in position, she said, lowering the phone. They will approach at 9, announce at the gate. If no response, they have authority to enter based on the warrant. Caspian's hands gripped the arms of his chair. What if she is not there? Then we reassess, but the warrant covers a full search of the property. If Evany was there at any point, the forensic team will find evidence. And if she is there, she will be transported to a secure location. Medical evaluation first, then we talk to her. Rivera met his eyes. If she corroborates your account, we move on Genevieve Ashford tonight. The clock on the wall read 8:47. 13 minutes. Marcus put his hand on Caspian's shoulder, said nothing. The gesture carried everything words could not. At 9 o'clock, Rivera's phone buzzed. She listened for 30 seconds. Her face revealed nothing. Years of practice had built walls around her reactions that even high-stakes moments could not penetrate. She lowered the phone. They are through the gate, approaching the main house. Silence in the office. The laptop's satellite image stared back at them, static and useless, now that events were happening in real time beyond its frozen frame. 2 minutes passed. Rivera's phone buzzed again. This time, she listened longer. A full minute. Her pen stopped moving against the notepad where she had been taking notes. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She hung up. Evany Cordova has been located inside the main house. She is alive. She is being transported to Swedish Medical Center for evaluation. Caspian's breath left his body in a sound he did not recognize. Something between a gasp and a sob. Relief so intense it registered as pain. There is more, Rivera continued. Her voice carried a new edge. Genevieve Ashford was also present at the property. What? She was in the house when the team entered. She did not resist. She did not attempt to flee. She was sitting in the living room, apparently waiting. Waiting for what? Rivera paused, choosing her words. According to the team leader, when officers entered the room, Genevieve Ashford looked up and said, "It took you long enough. I would like to make a statement." The statement Genevieve Ashford gave that night lasted 4 hours. Caspian was not present for it. Rivera kept him and Marcus in a separate room at the courthouse, away from the interview, away from Genevieve, away from anything that could compromise the legal proceedings that were now unfolding with institutional momentum. But Rivera briefed them afterward. Her face carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had just listened to a confession that restructured her understanding of what people were capable of. She confirmed everything: the falsified psychiatric evaluation, the bribery of Judge Webb, the 22-year commitment of Rosalind Ashford, the seizure of Theodore's estate, all of it. Marcus leaned forward. Why? Why confess now? Rivera set down her pen. She is dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed 5 months ago. The doctors have given her 3 months, possibly less. Caspian felt the information settle into him. His mother, the woman who raised him, dying. She said she has known for 5 months that her time was limited. She spent those months monitoring the situation, watching Dominic's investigation get closer, watching Rosalind's network expand, watching the walls close in from every direction. Did she order Dominic's murder? Rivera hesitated. The first time Caspian had seen her hesitate about anything. She says no. She acknowledges being aware that Dominic was investigating the family. She acknowledges having him under surveillance for years, but she denies ordering his death. Do you believe her? What I believe is irrelevant. What matters is what the evidence shows, and on that point she gave us something unexpected. Rivera opened a folder. Genevieve provided documentation suggesting that Dominic's death may be connected to a third party, someone she identified only as a silent investor who has been funding Rosalind's operations since her release from Willowbrook. The room went quiet. Genevieve claims this investor approached her 6 months ago with a proposal. In exchange for a significant share of the Ashford estate, this person would ensure that Rosalind's campaign against Genevieve failed. When Genevieve refused the deal, the investor shifted allegiances, began accelerating Rosalind's plans, and eliminated Dominic because Dominic had discovered the investor's identity. Who is this investor? Genevieve did not know, or claimed not to know. She provided financial records showing incoming contacts from an entity called Caraway Holdings. We are tracing it now. Marcus and Caspian exchanged a look. A third player. Someone operating behind both Rosalind and Genevieve. Someone funding the war between two sisters while positioning themselves to profit from whoever won. Someone who had killed Dominic to protect their own anonymity. Caspian went to the hospital at midnight. Swedish Medical Center's psychiatric evaluation wing occupied the 4th floor. Quiet hallways, muted lighting, the particular hush of a place designed to contain people whose lives had recently been turned inside out. A uniformed officer stood outside room 412. Rivera had arranged access. Caspian showed identification. The officer checked a list, nodded, stepped aside. He pushed the door open. Evany sat upright in the hospital bed, not lying down, not resting, sitting with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, as if she were waiting for a meeting to begin. A posture of readiness that looked wrong against the white sheets and institutional pillows. She was thinner than he remembered, the bones of her wrists and collarbone pressed against skin that had lost the warmth it carried 2 years ago. Dark circles carved trenches beneath her eyes. Her hair was shorter, cut to a functional length that prioritized convenience over appearance. But her eyes were the same. Dark brown, steady, the eyes of someone who had learned to watch the world carefully because the world had given her every reason to. She looked at him. He looked at her. 2 years of silence filled the space between them. 24 months of questions he had rehearsed and answers she had probably rehearsed too, and none of it mattered now because they were in the same room and the distance between the bed and the doorway was 6 feet but felt like 6,000 miles. "Hi," she said. 1 syllable. Her voice cracked on it. "Hi," he said back, and for a long moment, that was enough. He sat in the chair beside her bed. Not too close. Not too far. A distance that communicated presence without pressure. "Stellan," he said. "Tell me about him." Her face changed. The tension that had held her features in place since he walked in softened into something else. Something that looked like the first genuine emotion she had allowed herself in days. "He is incredible." Her voice steadied when she talked about their son, as if the subject itself provided structural support. He started walking at 11 months, early. He was impatient about it, kept pulling himself up on furniture and falling and pulling himself up again until his legs figured out what his brain already knew. Caspian listened. "He talks constantly, full sentences since 18 months. He asks questions about everything. Why is the sky that color? Where do birds sleep? How do cars know? Where to go?" He does not accept simple answers. If you tell him cars follow roads, he wants to know who put the roads there and why they chose that direction. A small smile crossed her face. "The first real one. He looks like you, the shape of his face, the way he tilts his head when he is thinking about something. Sometimes I would look at him across the breakfast table and see you so clearly it felt like being punched. Caspian's throat tightened. Does he know about me? He knows he has a father. He knows his father loves him but could not be with them because of complicated grown-up reasons. He asks about you, not constantly but regularly, usually at bedtime. He wants to know if you are tall, if you like dinosaurs, if you would be good at building block towers. Am I tall? Comparatively. The ghost of a smile. And you are terrible at block towers. I told him you were excellent. Thank you for lying on my behalf. They looked at each other. The humor faded. What remained was heavier, but also more honest. Rosalind has him, Caspian said. She says he is safe. Ebony's expression hardened. Rosalind says a lot of things. I know. I also know what she made you into, what she built you for. Dominic documented everything. The words landed, visibly. Ebony's shoulders dropped. Her hands unfolded from her lap and gripped the blanket instead. You know all of it. I know the facts. I do not know your side. My side. She repeated the phrase as if testing its weight. You want to know if it was real. I want to know what was real and what was not, and I want you to trust me enough to tell the truth. All of it. Even the parts that make you look bad. Ebony studied his face for a long time, reading him the way she had been trained to read everyone. Except this time, the reading was not for intelligence gathering. It was for something older and simpler. She was trying to determine if it was safe to be honest. Everything Rosalind told you about how I was recruited is true. I was homeless. She found me. She offered me a life. I took it because the alternative was sleeping in doorways until something killed me. And the training. 3 years of becoming someone else. Languages, etiquette, social engineering. She taught me how to read a room the way a chess player reads a board, how to identify what someone wanted to hear and become the person who said it. And me. Ebony closed her eyes. You were the assignment. Thursday night volunteer at the East Side shelter, predictable schedule, known to engage with new faces, responsive to authenticity. She opened her eyes. I was positioned to intercept you. The blue sweater was chosen because Rosalind's research indicated you responded to understated clothing over flashy presentation. The conversation in the kitchen was scripted to the first 4 exchanges. Each detail was a small blade. Caspian absorbed them without flinching. The first 4 exchanges. After that, you said something I had not prepared for. You asked the kid next to me what his favorite subject in school was, and when he said art, you spent 10 minutes, asking him about his drawings. You forgot I was there entirely. You were just talking to this kid about crayons and paper and whether dragons should have 4 legs or 2. She paused. Nobody briefed me on that. Nobody told me you would ignore the woman you were supposed to be attracted to in order to have a genuine conversation with a 7-year-old about dragon anatomy. That was not in any file. That is when it started. That is when the cracks started. The performance held for months after that, but the foundation was already compromised. Because I kept seeing moments like that one, moments where you were just yourself, unguarded, unperformed, and every time it happened, the distance between who I was pretending to be and who I wanted to be got smaller. When did the pretending stop? Month 6, the night I spilled wine on your couch. Caspian remembered. I was not supposed to drink that much. Rosalind's protocols were very clear about maintaining control at all times. But you told that terrible joke about tax, deductions, and I laughed before I could stop myself. Not the laugh I had practiced, my actual laugh. The loud, embarrassing one I had trained out of myself years ago. Her eyes glistened. And you looked at me like it was the best sound you had ever heard. Like my real laugh was better than any performance I could have given. And I realized I was in love with you, and I was completely, catastrophically compromised. After I stopped reporting to Rosalind, everything accelerated. She sent intermediaries. I refused them. She threatened to reveal my identity to you. I told her to go ahead. She did not, because exposing me would have exposed her entire operation. Stalemate. Temporary stalemate. Then I found out I was pregnant. Ebony's hands moved to her stomach. An unconscious gesture. The body remembering what the mind had already narrated. I told Rosalind because I panicked. It was the last time I ever contacted her voluntarily. She told me to use the pregnancy to deepen my access to the Ashford family, to position the baby as leverage for later. And you refused. I hung up the phone and packed a bag. I was gone within 48 hours. New city, new name, new life. I left you without explanation because every explanation I could give would have required telling you the truth, and the truth would have put you in the middle of a war between two women who would have used you and our baby as ammunition. You made that decision for me. Yes. No apology in her voice. No regret either. Just the flat certainty of someone who had made an impossible choice and lived with it every day since. I made that decision for you, and for Stellan, and I would make it again, even knowing what it cost us. Even knowing. Her jaw tightened. Because the alternative was watching Rosalind turn our son into a weapon the way she turned me into one, or watching Genevieve take him the way she took you. I chose a third option. I chose disappearing. The room was quiet. Machines hummed softly. The fluorescent light buzzed at a frequency just below conscious perception. How did Genevieve find you? Dominic's death, the investigation into his murder generated attention. People started looking into connections between Dominic and the Ashford family. Someone, I do not know who, connected my old identity to my new one. Within a week, Genevieve's people were at my door. What did she do to you? Evany's expression closed. The openness that had characterized the last 20 minutes retreated behind walls that went up fast and solid. She talked to me. Talked. For 3 days in that house. She sat across from me at a table and she talked. She told me what she would do to Stellan if I did not cooperate. She told me she would have me, committed the way she committed Rosalind. She told me every detail of what Rosalind's 22 years in Willowbrook looked like, slowly, precisely, as if she were reading from a manual. Evany's voice had gone flat. Affect stripped away by the memory. She never raised her voice. She never threatened physical harm. She just described in perfect detail what she was capable of doing and how long she was capable of doing it, and she smiled while she said it. She wanted you to believe she would do it. I did not need to believe it. She had already done it once. That was the point. Evany looked at him. Your mother is the most frightening person I have ever met, and I have met people who should have terrified me more. She is not my mother. The words came out before Caspian fully processed them. But once they were in the air, he did not take them back. She raised me, she fed me, she loved me in whatever way she was capable of loving, but she is not my mother. My mother spent 22 years in a hospital because Genevieve needed her to disappear. Evany reached for his hand. He let her take it. What happens now? She asked. Rivera is building a case. Genevieve has already confessed to the kidnapping, the false imprisonment, the bribery. She is cooperating. Why would she cooperate? She is dying, cancer, 3 months left. Evany absorbed that. Her face showed nothing. Not satisfaction, not sympathy. Just the careful blankness of someone for whom Genevieve Ashford occupied a space beyond normal emotional response. There is something else, Caspian continued. Genevieve says Dominic was killed by a third party, someone who has been funding Rosalind's operations. Someone who tried to make a deal with Genevieve for a share of the Ashford estate and turned hostile when she refused. Caraway Holdings. Caspian went still. You know that name. Rosalind mentioned it once, early in my training. She said her benefactor operated through a company called Caraway. She said the money came with no strings except one. When the time came, Rosalind would owe a favor, an unspecified favor to be named later. Did she say who was behind it? No, she said she did not know, and I believed her, which I now realize may have been naive. Evany squeezed his hand. But there is something else, something I noticed during my time with Rosalind that I never understood until right now. What? She had a photograph in the room where she worked, a small framed picture she kept turned away from visitors. I saw it once when she left the room and I looked. Old photograph. A young man standing in front of a building I did not recognize. Could you identify him? Not then, but I can now, because I have spent the last 3 days staring at the face of the woman who kidnapped me, and the man in that photograph had the same eyes. Caspian's blood went cold. Genevieve's eyes. And Rosalind's. Evany nodded. A family resemblance that goes beyond the twins, an older face, male, someone from the previous generation. The Ashford twins had a brother. The words settled in the room like something heavy dropped from a height. Dominic's first photograph. The old one with the faded colors. The man standing behind the woman and child. The man whose posture had sent a pulse of recognition through Caspian's body. The man whose face was partially obscured by shadow, not because the lighting was bad, because he was deliberately staying out of full view. A third Ashford sibling, hidden from the family record the same way Rosalind had been hidden, or perhaps hidden voluntarily, choosing to operate from the shadows rather than under the family name, funding Rosalind's revenge, approaching Genevieve with a deal, killing Dominic when Dominic discovered the connection, playing both sisters against each other while positioning himself to inherit whatever remained when the war was over. "I need to call Rivera," Caspian said. He stepped into the hallway. The uniformed officer nodded as he passed. The corridor was empty except for the distant sound of a nurse's station and the ever-present hum of hospital machinery. He dialed Marcus first. "It is a third sibling. Genevieve and Rosalind had a brother. He has been behind Caraway Holdings. He funded Rosalind's entire operation. He killed Dominic." Marcus was silent for 3 seconds. "That is a significant allegation. Based on what?" Evany saw a photograph in Rosalind's possession. A man with Ashford family features. Someone from the previous generation. The same man in one of Dominic's photographs. A man who has been operating in the background of this entire story. Rivera needs to hear this. Can Evany provide a formal description, enough for identification? She can do better than that. She can tell Rivera exactly where Rosalind kept that photograph. If Rivera can get a warrant for Rosalind's residence, the photograph becomes evidence. Where is Rosalind now? That question stopped Caspian cold. He did not know. After the warehouse meeting, Rosalind had communicated only through the burner phone. She had not provided her location. She had not offered to come in voluntarily. She was still out there, somewhere, with Stellan, with his son. And if the brother was real, if a third Ashford had been manipulating both sisters from the shadows, then Rosalind was not the puppet master she believed herself to be. She was a puppet who thought she was pulling her own strings, which meant Stellan was in the custody of a woman who did not fully understand the danger she was in. "Marcus, I need to find Rosalind, tonight." "Caspian, my son is with her, and whoever killed Dominic is connected to her operation. If this brother decides Rosalind is a liability, if he decides to clean up loose ends the way he cleaned up Dominic." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "Call Rivera," Marcus said. "Tell her everything, then stay at the hospital with Evany. Do not go looking for Rosalind yourself. My son is out there. Your son is with someone who has been successfully hiding from Genevieve Ashford for 6 years. Whatever else Rosalind is, she is competent. Stellan is safer with her than he would be with you walking blind into a situation you do not fully understand." The logic was sound. Caspian hated every word of it. "I will call Rivera." Rivera answered on the second ring despite the hour. The woman apparently did not sleep. He relayed everything Evany had told him. The Caraway Holdings connection, the photograph in Rosalind's possession, the theory of a third Ashford sibling. Rivera listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked 3 questions. "Does Evany know the brother's name?" "No." "Does Rosalind know you suspect his existence?" "I do not know." "Is your son still in Rosalind's custody?" "Yes." Rivera paused. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different weight. "I am going to be direct with you, Mr. Ashford. This situation has escalated beyond a family dispute. We are now looking at a potential serial offender who has committed at least 1 murder, funded criminal operations across state lines, and may currently have access to a minor child through an intermediary." "I understand. I am bringing in the FBI. This crosses jurisdictions and involves financial crimes that exceed my office's scope. I have a contact at the Seattle field office who can mobilize resources tonight." "How long?" "Hours, not days. But I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Call Rosalind. On the burner phone. Tell her you need to see Stellan. Tell her whatever you need to tell her to get a location, but keep her talking long enough for us to trace the call. You want me to help you find her? I want to find your son, Mr. Ashford, and right now, finding Rosalind is how we do that. Caspian leaned against the hospital corridor wall. The fluorescent lights hummed above him. Behind the door to room 412, Evany waited with 2 years of explanations and a lifetime of complications. Ahead of him, somewhere in the dark, his son slept in a bed Caspian had never seen, in a room he had never entered, in a life he had never been part of. "Give me 30 minutes, he said. He hung up and dialed the burner phone. Rosalind answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was alert despite the hour. Whatever sleep schedule she maintained, it was not a normal one. "Caspian, has something happened?" "Evany is safe. Law enforcement found her at the Meridian estate. Genevieve was there. She is in custody. She is cooperating." Silence. He could hear Rosalind recalculating. Every word he spoke changed the variables in equations she had been running for years. "Genevieve is cooperating." She repeated it slowly, tasting the words for deception. She confessed to everything, the stolen custody, your commitment, Judge Webb, all of it. "Why?" "She is dying, cancer. She has 3 months. More silence. Longer this time. Caspian tried to imagine what it felt like to learn that the woman who destroyed your life was dying, whether there was satisfaction in it, or grief, or just the particular emptiness of realizing that justice and mortality had converged too late to matter. "Rosalind, I need to see Stellan." "Not yet. He is my son. And he is my grandson, and until I am certain that Genevieve's cooperation is genuine and not another manipulation, Stellan stays where he is. Listen to me carefully. The DA is building a case. FBI is being brought in. This is happening with or without your cooperation. If you work with them, you are the victim in this story, the woman who was wrongly imprisoned, the mother who lost her child. Every piece of Dominic's evidence supports that narrative." He paused. "But if you obstruct the investigation by withholding a minor child, the narrative changes. You become a kidnapper. You become Genevieve." The words hit exactly where he aimed them. He heard Rosalind's breath catch. "Do not compare me to her. Then do not repeat her mistakes. She took a child that was not hers because she believed she knew best. She justified it with logic and necessity and the absolute certainty that her judgment superseded everyone else's. That is exactly what you are doing right now." Silence stretched between them. He kept the line open, kept her thinking, kept the trace running in whatever system Rivera had activated. "He is safe, Caspian. I believe you. He is sleeping right now, in a room with a nightlight because he does not like total darkness. He ate macaroni and cheese for dinner because that is what he requested, and I have learned in 3 weeks that arguing with him about food is pointless." Her voice softened in a way he had not heard before. Not the steel and calculation of the warehouse meeting. Something underneath all of that. The voice of a grandmother who had missed everything and was trying to absorb decades of love into weeks. "He calls me Rosie. I did not ask him to. He decided on his own that Rosalind was too many syllables and shortened it. He does that with everything. Efficiency, he calls it." Despite everything, Caspian almost smiled. "He sounds like an Ashford. He sounds like you, when you were small, before Genevieve polished everything spontaneous out of you." The words carried a grief so deep it had no bottom. "Rosalind, please, tell me where he is. Let me come to him." A long, long pause. "There is a house, Clara's house, the nurse who helped me leave Willowbrook. She retired to Whidbey Island 3 years ago, a cottage at the end of Madrona Road, no number on the mailbox, blue door." "I know Whidbey Island." "Come in the morning. He wakes up early. He will want breakfast." She paused again. "Caspian, there is something else I need to tell you, about your father, about Theodore. Tell me in the morning. It cannot wait." Her voice tightened. "The birth certificate you saw, the one Dominic had, the one that lists Theodore as your father. What about it? It is accurate. Theodore is your biological father, but there is context that changes what that means. Context I should have given you in the warehouse, but chose not to because I was too focused on my own grievances. What context? Theodore did not know about you until after you were born. Our relationship, his and mine, it happened once, one night. He was already married to Genevieve. He was already committed to their life together. What happened between us was a mistake he regretted immediately, and I never regretted at all. She took a shaking breath. When Genevieve discovered my pregnancy, she did not simply react out of jealousy. She reacted out of genuine betrayal. Her husband and her twin sister, the two people she trusted most in the world. We did that to her. I did that to her. That does not justify 22 years of imprisonment. No, nothing justifies that, but it explains something I have refused to acknowledge for 3 decades. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Genevieve was a monster, but I helped create the monster, and every terrible thing she did afterward grew from a wound that I inflicted first. The line went quiet, not silence, something more intentional. The deliberate pause of a woman who had spent 28 years constructing a narrative of pure victimhood and was, for the first time, dismantling it voluntarily. "Come in the morning," she repeated. "Blue door. He likes his eggs scrambled." The line went dead. Caspian stood in the hospital corridor, holding the phone, breathing. Then he called Rivera. "Whidbey Island, Madrona Road. A cottage with a blue door." "We have it." The trace confirmed the general location. "I will have agents positioned nearby by dawn. They will not approach until you arrive." "Thank you." "Mr. Ashford, one more thing. The financial trace on Caraway Holdings produced a result. The entity was registered in Delaware 14 years ago. The registered agent used a name we were able to cross-reference with Ashford family records." His grip tightened on the phone. "The name is Conrad Ashford, born 1958, listed in Harold and Catherine Ashford's estate documents as their eldest child, 3 years older than the twins. A brother. Confirmed. More than confirmed. Conrad Ashford was declared legally dead in 1992, a boating accident off the coast of Maine, body never recovered. He faked his death. That is our working theory. He has been operating under assumed identities for over 30 years. The financial trail suggests he built considerable wealth through investments that frequently intersected with Ashford family business dealings. He has been orbiting your family for decades without anyone knowing he was alive. Except Rosalind. Possibly. We need to determine how much she knows and whether her cooperation with Conrad was willing or manipulated. And Dominic. If Conrad killed Dominic to protect his anonymity, we now have a suspect with means, motive, and a 30-year history of deception. I have agents working on current locations, credit card activity, property records, travel documents under known aliases. He has had 30 years to learn how to disappear. Everyone leaves traces, Mr. Ashford, even ghosts. Caspian returned to Evany's room. She was still sitting upright, still waiting. The posture of someone who had learned that lying down meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant danger. "Stellan is on Whidbey Island, with Rosalind. I am going in the morning." Evany's entire body reacted to the name, relief and fear in equal measure, fighting for control of her features. "Is he safe?" "She says he is." She described his nightlight preferences and his opinions about macaroni and cheese. It sounded genuine. "It is genuine. He does not like total darkness. He has not since he was 14 months old." Evany's hands twisted the blanket. "Can I come with you?" "The doctors want to keep you overnight for observation." "I do not care what the doctors want. My son is on an island with a woman who once told me to use my pregnancy as a strategic asset. I am going." Caspian looked at her, exhausted, thin, bruised in places she had not shown him, running on the kind of energy that mothers manufactured from nothing when their children needed them. "We leave at 6. The first ferry is at 7:15. She nodded, swung her legs over the side of the bed, started looking for her shoes. "Evany." She stopped. "When this is over, when Stellan is safe and Genevieve is in custody and the lawyers and agents and investigators have finished dismantling everything, when there is nothing left to run from." He met her eyes. "I want to build something real, with you, with our son. No operations, no manufactured identities, no strategic positioning, just the 3 of us figuring out what a family looks like when nobody is lying." Her eyes filled. She blinked the tears back with the efficiency of someone who had trained herself not to cry and was failing at it spectacularly. That is a nice speech. Is it enough? She considered the question. The same question he had asked once before, in a different version of this conversation, in a future that had not happened yet but felt like it had. Ask me again tomorrow, after I have held my son. Deal. She found her shoes. He helped her with the laces because her hands were shaking too badly to tie them. They walked out of the hospital together, into the night, toward morning. The ferry to Whidbey Island departed from Mukilteo at 7:15. Dawn arrived in layers. First the sky lightened from black to charcoal. Then the horizon separated from the water, a thin line of distinction between two darknesses. Then color bled in slowly. Grey, blue, the faintest suggestion of gold where the sun would eventually breach the Cascade foothills. Caspian and Evany stood on the upper deck despite the cold. The wind off Puget Sound cut through their coats. Salt spray misted their faces. Neither suggested going inside. Below them, the car deck held Caspian's sedan and an unmarked FBI vehicle carrying two agents who had been briefed by Rivera an hour earlier. They would follow at a distance, positioned nearby but out of sight until Caspian confirmed Stellan's safety. The ferry churned through slate-grey water. Seagulls followed in its wake, diving for whatever the propellers churned up. The sound of the engines created a constant low vibration that Caspian felt in his teeth. Evany stood beside him at the railing, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Not quite touching, a distance measured in millimeters and years. "Tell me something about him," Caspian said. "Something ordinary, something that has nothing to do with any of this." Evany thought for a moment. "He sings in the bathtub, not real songs, songs he makes up. They are always about animals doing things animals do not do, fish driving buses, cats, building houses. He is very serious about the lyrics. If you laugh, he starts over from the beginning because, in his words, the song is not meant to be funny." Caspian smiled, a real smile, the first one in days. "What else?" "He has a stuffed elephant named Professor. He has had Professor since he was 4 months old. Professor goes everywhere. Professor has been repaired 11 times. I have become an expert in stuffed animal surgery." "Does Professor have a specialty?" "Astronomy. According to Stellan, Professor teaches at a university for elephants where the primary subject is stars. He has very strong opinions about which stars are the best ones." "Which stars are the best ones?" "The ones you can see from his bedroom window. He calls them his stars. He named them all. I cannot remember most of the names, but one of them is called Gerald." Caspian laughed. It came out rough and unexpected, scraping past grief and fear and exhaustion. But it was real as anything he had felt in weeks. "Gerald the Star. Gerald the Star." Evany's voice was soft. "He is a wonderful kid, Caspian, despite everything. Despite the running and the hiding and the fact that his mother is a professionally trained liar who built his entire life on a foundation of secrets, he is kind, he is curious, he is funny in ways that surprise me every single day." She turned to look at him. "And he deserves a father, a real one, not a story I tell him at bedtime about a man who is excellent at block towers. I am apparently terrible at block towers. You will learn." The island grew larger on the horizon. Green hills rising from grey water, a lighthouse blinking steadily on the southern point. 20 minutes to shore. Then a drive along island roads to a cottage with a blue door, where a 2-year-old boy was waking up and requesting scrambled eggs from a grandmother he called Rosie. They drove off the ferry and onto the island. The FBI vehicle followed 3 cars behind. The island roads were narrow, lined with Douglas firs that blocked the morning sun and created tunnels of green shadow. Madrona Road branched off the main highway 2 miles past the ferry terminal, a gravel road that wound through forest before opening onto a stretch of waterfront properties. Small houses, modest, the kind of homes that valued privacy and proximity to water over size and ostentation. The cottage with the blue door sat at the end of the road. It was smaller than Caspian expected. Single story. Cedar shingle siding, weathered to silver grey. A front porch with 2 rocking chairs. A garden that had been tended recently. Winter vegetables in raised beds, the soil dark and damp. Smoke rose from the chimney. A light was on, in what appeared to be the kitchen. Caspian parked in the gravel drive, killed the engine. Sat with his hands on the steering wheel. I am about to meet my son. The words came out strange, simultaneously enormous and inadequate. 5 words that contained the entirety of everything he felt and expressed approximately none of it. Ebony put her hand on his arm. He is going to love you. How do you know? Because he already does. He loves the idea of you. The real thing is only going to be better. Caspian exhaled, opened the door. The morning air hit him, cold, clean, carrying the scent of cedar and salt water and wood smoke. They walked to the blue door together. Before Caspian could knock, it opened. Rosalind stood in the doorway. She looked different from the warehouse, smaller. The theatrical authority she had projected in that vast dark space was absent here. In this cottage, in morning light, wearing a cardigan and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, she looked like what she was. A 60-year-old woman who had survived something terrible and was trying to figure out what came after survival. He is in the kitchen, she said quietly. Eating eggs. I scrambled them the way he likes, with cheese. She stepped aside. Caspian walked through the door. The kitchen was warm. A wood stove in the corner radiated heat that had accumulated overnight. The counters were clean. A cast-iron skillet sat on the range with traces of scrambled eggs. A glass of orange juice, half finished, stood beside a plate decorated with cartoon dinosaurs. And at the table, sitting on a stack of books because the chair was too tall for him, was Stellan. He was small, impossibly small. The physical reality of a 2-year-old was something photographs and descriptions could not prepare you for. He was built on a scale that made the world around him look oversized. The fork in his hand, the glass beside his plate, the chair beneath him, everything designed for people much larger than he was. His hair was dark, Ebony's hair, but the shape of his face, the particular architecture of brow and cheekbone and jaw, was Ashford. Unmistakably, a miniature version of a face Caspian saw every morning in the mirror. He was talking to a stuffed elephant propped against the salt shaker. The elephant was grey and worn and had been stitched together so many times it resembled a patchwork quilt more than a toy. Professor says the eggs need more cheese, Stellan announced to the room without looking up. He is very specific about cheese ratios. Ebony made a sound behind Caspian. A small, broken gasp that contained more love than any complete sentence could have managed. Stellan looked up. He saw his mother first. His face split into a grin so wide it seemed to exceed the physical capacity of his features. "Mama!" He scrambled off the book stack with the graceless urgency of a toddler who has not yet learned that gravity has opinions about sudden movements. Ebony caught him before he hit the floor. She lifted him against her chest and held him with the desperate, crushing grip of a woman who had spent 3 days not knowing if she would ever do this again. Stellan wrapped his arms around her neck. His small fingers grabbed fistfuls of her hair. He buried his face in her shoulder. "You were gone," he said. His voice was muffled against her coat. "You were gone a long time." "I know, baby. I am sorry. I am here now. Rosie made eggs." "I see that. Professor says they need more cheese." "Professor is very wise." Stellan pulled his face from her shoulder. His eyes, dark brown like Ebony's, moved past his mother to the man standing 3 feet away. He studied Caspian with the unfiltered directness that only very small children possess. No social conventions, no polite avoidance of staring, just pure, undiluted observation, taking in every detail with the thoroughness of someone encountering a new species for the first time. "You are tall," Stellan said. Caspian's throat closed completely. He could not speak. Every word he had ever known evacuated his mind simultaneously, leaving nothing but the sound of his own heartbeat and the sight of his son's face looking up at him with curiosity that had not yet learned to be afraid. "Yes," he managed. Stellan considered this. "Are you good at block towers?" Caspian looked at Evany. She was crying, silently, tears running down her face while she held their son and watched the two of them meet for the first time. "I am learning," Caspian said. Stellan nodded, the nod of a man accepting a job applicant on a probationary basis. "Professor can teach you. He knows about structures." "I thought Professor taught astronomy." Stellan's eyes widened. He looked at his mother. "You told him about Professor?" "I told him everything important." Stellan turned back to Caspian. Something shifted in his small face, a connection forming, a recognition that went beyond what a 2-year-old should have been capable of understanding but existed anyway, in the space between instinct and knowledge. "Are you my dad?" 3 words, spoken with the same directness he applied to everything else. No ceremony, no build-up, just the question, asked by a child who had been wondering about the answer since he was old enough to notice that other children had something he did not. Caspian knelt down, bringing himself to Stellan's level, looking directly into eyes that were Evany's color, but held something entirely their own. "Yes, I am your dad." Stellan processed this for approximately 4 seconds. Then he extended Professor toward Caspian with both hands. "Professor wants to meet you. He has been waiting." Caspian took the stuffed elephant. Its body was warm from Stellan's hands. Its stitched eyes looked up at him with the patient, knowing expression of a toy that had been loved beyond all structural integrity and survived anyway. "Hello, Professor," Caspian said. His voice cracked on both words. "He says hello back," Stellan reported. "He also says you should stay for breakfast. There are more eggs." "I would like that, very much." "Good." Stellan reached for Caspian's free hand. His fingers were impossibly small. They wrapped around 2 of Caspian's fingers because his entire hand could not span more than that. He tugged. "Come on. I will show you which stars are mine. You can see some of them even in the morning if you know where to look." Caspian stood. His son's hand held 2 of his fingers. In his other hand, a stuffed elephant named Professor. Behind him, Evany wiped her face and followed them toward the window. In the doorway, Rosalind watched. Her expression held something that defied simple categorization. Grief and joy and regret and hope, layered so densely they became a single emotion that existed only in the faces of people who had lost everything and were witnessing for the first time the possibility of something being returned. The morning light fell through the kitchen window. Stellan pointed at the sky and began naming stars that were not visible but were absolutely unquestionably there. Gerald was the brightest one. Stellan was very sure about that. Rosalind made coffee, while Caspian and Evany sat at the kitchen table with Stellan between them. The boy showed no signs of the upheaval that surrounded his life. He ate his remaining eggs, negotiated for more cheese, and maintained a running commentary on Professor's opinions about breakfast foods. Children, Caspian realized, existed in a different temporal reality. The crises of adults were weather systems that passed overhead, sometimes frightening, sometimes disruptive, but ultimately external to the immediate concerns of cheese ratios and star nomenclature. Rosalind set a mug in front of him. Black coffee. She had not asked how he took it. She had known. "We need to talk," she said quietly, sitting across from him. "Before your friends outside come to the door. You know about the agents. I watched you drive in. The second vehicle was not subtle." She wrapped her hands around her own mug. "I am not going to run. I am too old and too tired, and I have spent enough of my life hiding from things." "Good, because running is no longer an option that protects anyone." "I know." She looked at Stellan, who was explaining to Professor that eggs came from chickens and that chickens were, in his considered opinion, underappreciated. "Tell me what you need from me." "Conrad Ashford." Rosalind went very still. "I know he is alive. I know he funded your operations through Caraway Holdings. I know he has been orbiting this family for decades while everyone believed he died in 1992. She set down her mug. "How much do you know?" "Enough to understand that the person who killed Dominic was not Genevieve. It was the brother you never told me about." Rosalind closed her eyes. When she opened them, the last layer of performance was gone. What remained was a tired woman who had made choices she could not undo. Conrad found me 18 months after my release from Willowbrook. I do not know how. He simply appeared one day, knew everything about me, about what Genevieve had done, about you. And he offered to help. He offered resources, money, infrastructure, everything I needed to build the operation against Genevieve. He said he had his own reasons for wanting the Ashford empire dismantled. He said Genevieve had taken things from him too. What things? His inheritance. When their parents died, Genevieve controlled the estate through her position as Theodore's wife and your guardian. Conrad was already legally dead by then. He could not claim what was rightfully his without revealing he had faked his death, which would have created its own legal consequences. So he used you. We used each other, or so I believed. Rosalind's jaw tightened. He provided funding. I provided the plan, Evany, the infiltration of your life, the long-term strategy to expose Genevieve and reclaim the estate. But his endgame was different from yours. I wanted justice, exposure, acknowledgement that what was done to me was criminal. She paused. Conrad wanted money, the estate, the holdings, everything with an Ashford name on it. Justice was irrelevant to him. He wanted what he believed was owed to him, and he was willing to let two sisters destroy each other to get it. And Dominic. Rosalind's face tightened. Dominic discovered Conrad's involvement 8 months ago, found financial connections between Caraway Holdings and my operations. He traced the money backward and found a dead man's signature on corporate documents. He was going to tell me. He was going to tell you everything, not just about Genevieve and me, about Conrad, about the invisible hand that had been guiding events for years. Conrad could not allow that. So he had Dominic killed. I believe so. I cannot prove it. But 3 days before Dominic's death, Conrad contacted me and said the timeline needed to accelerate. He said there were complications that required immediate action. He did not specify what kind of action. She looked at Caspian with eyes that held the particular anguish of someone who understood their own complicity. I should have warned Dominic. I should have recognized what Conrad was planning. But I was so focused on my own war that I did not see the war being waged around me. Where is Conrad now? I do not know. After Dominic's death, Conrad went silent. No calls, no messages, no financial activity through the channels I knew about. He disappeared the way he has been disappearing for 30 years. Rivera and the FBI are looking for him. They will not find him easily. Conrad has had 3 decades to build escape routes, false identities, properties in countries without extradition treaties. He is not like Genevieve, who stayed in one place and dared the world to challenge her. Conrad moves. He has always moved. Stellan tugged on Caspian's sleeve. Can Professor have more juice? Caspian poured orange juice into the dinosaur glass. Professor was propped against it, as if drinking independently. Stellan nodded with satisfaction at the arrangement. Normal moments. Extraordinary circumstances. The juxtaposition was almost unbearable. At 9 o'clock, Caspian walked outside to meet the FBI agents. They were parked 50 yards down Madrona Road. 2 agents in dark jackets, standing beside their vehicle, doing a poor job of looking like tourists. Agent Torres was tall and serious. Agent Nakamura was shorter and appeared to be operating on roughly the same amount of sleep as everyone else involved in this case. Rosalind Ashford is inside, Caspian told them. She is willing to cooperate. She has information about Conrad Ashford that your office needs. We appreciate that, Torres said. Rivera briefed us on the full situation. We will need to interview Ms. Ashford formally, and the child needs to be assessed by social services. The child is 2 years old. He's eating scrambled eggs with a stuffed elephant. He does not need to be assessed. He needs to be left alone. Torres and Nakamura exchanged a glance. Protocol requires... Protocol can wait until he finishes breakfast. Another exchanged glance. This one carried the particular resignation of law enforcement officers, recognizing that a protective father was not a variable they could efficiently manage. We will give you an hour, Torres said. Then we need to come inside. Thank you. Caspian walked back to the cottage. The blue door stood open. Morning light spilled across the threshold. Inside, Stellan was showing Evany a drawing he had made that morning, a green shape that he identified as a dinosaur. Beside the dinosaur, a taller shape in blue. "That is my dad," he explained, pointing to the blue shape. "He is learning about block towers. Professor is teaching him." He had drawn Caspian before Caspian arrived, before he knew his father was coming, as if some part of him had always known this morning would happen and had been preparing the welcome in crayon. Evany met Caspian's eyes over their son's head. She was smiling, not the practiced smile of a trained operative, not the careful smile of a woman managing her emotional output. A crooked, teary, exhausted, radiant smile that came from somewhere no one had manufactured. He smiled back. It was not enough. It would never be enough to bridge 2 years of absence and a foundation built on lies and a family whose history read like a criminal indictment. But it was a start. And sometimes a start was the bravest thing in the world. The investigation into Conrad Ashford took 11 weeks. Rivera and the FBI built the case methodically. Financial forensics traced Caraway Holdings through 7 shell companies across 4 countries. Each layer peeled back revealed another, until the full architecture of Conrad's 30-year shadow empire became visible. He had been everywhere, a silent investor in companies that competed with Ashford Holdings, a board member, under assumed names, of organizations that intersected with Genevieve's philanthropic network, a presence at industry events where he stood in the background of photographs that no one thought to examine closely. Dominic had examined them. That was what got him killed. The break came from an unexpected source. Clara, the retired nurse on Whidbey Island, remembered something she had not thought significant at the time. A man who visited Willowbrook during her tenure. Not a patient, not family. A consultant brought in to review financial operations of the facility. He had spent 3 days auditing accounts and asking questions about long-term patients. Clara remembered his face because he had stopped outside Rosalind's room and watched her through the window for 10 minutes without entering. She described him to a sketch artist. The sketch matched a passport photo recovered from a safe deposit box in Delaware that had been registered to one of Conrad's known aliases. Conrad had visited Rosalind in Willowbrook before she was released. He had watched her through a window, and then he had waited until she was free, until her anger had fully calcified into purpose, until she was ready to be aimed at the sister who had wronged them both. He had not rescued her. He had assessed her, determined her usefulness, and filed her away for future deployment. The same thing he would later help her do to Evany. The pattern repeated across generations, Ashford after Ashford, turning people into instruments. They found Conrad in Lisbon, a rented apartment overlooking the Tagus River. Expensive, but not extravagant. The kind of place chosen by someone who valued access to transportation over comfort. The airport was 20 minutes away. The harbour offered private boat charters with minimal documentation requirements. He did not resist arrest. According to the agents who entered his apartment, he was sitting at a desk, reading a newspaper, drinking coffee from a ceramic cup. He looked up when they came through the door, and his only words were, "I expected this would take longer." He was extradited to the United States within 3 weeks. The charges included conspiracy to commit murder in connection with Dominic Mercer's death, money laundering, fraud, and a collection of financial crimes that would take prosecutors months to fully catalogue. His trial would not begin for over a year. The legal machinery moved at its own pace, indifferent to the urgency of the people caught inside it. Genevieve Ashford died on a Tuesday, 11 weeks after her confession, almost exactly 3 months, as the doctors had predicted. The cancer took what was left of her with the same methodical efficiency she had applied to everything else in her life. Caspian visited her once, 1 week before the end. She was in a private hospice facility, the kind of place where money could still buy comfort even after it could no longer buy time. She was smaller than he remembered. The cancer had consumed her from the inside, leaving behind a frame that seemed to have been built for a larger person. Her silver hair was gone. Her hands, always so precise in their movements, lay still on the white blanket. He sat beside her bed for an hour. They spoke very little. There were no dramatic confessions, no final revelations, No tearful reconciliation that resolved decades of deception in a single conversation. She asked about Stellan. He named a star Gerald, Caspian told her. She smiled. It was small and genuine, and it was the last expression he saw on her face before he left the room. He did not attend the funeral. Neither did Rosalind. Rosalind's legal situation resolved differently than anyone anticipated. Rivera, after reviewing the full scope of evidence, determined that Rosalind Ashford was both perpetrator and victim in a case that defied clean categorization. She had manipulated and deceived. She had recruited a vulnerable woman and deployed her as an intelligence asset. She had withheld a minor child from his parents, but she had also been illegally imprisoned for 22 years, drugged, isolated, erased from public record. Every action she took after her release existed in the shadow of what had been done to her. Not an excuse, not a justification, but a context that no honest legal analysis could ignore. The deal Rivera offered was straightforward. Full cooperation in the case against Conrad. Complete testimony regarding Genevieve's crimes for the public record. Mandatory psychological counseling. No prison time. Rosalind accepted. She moved to a small apartment in Olympia. Close enough to visit. Far enough to give everyone space. She saw Stellan on weekends, when Caspian and Evany brought him down for what Stellan called rosy days. She was learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to be part of a family without trying to control it. It did not come naturally. Some weeks were better than others. Some visits ended with tension that took days to dissipate. But she kept showing up, and Stellan kept calling her Rosie. And sometimes, on good days, she would sit on the floor and help him build block towers that Professor inevitably evaluated as structurally unsound. Evany's past did not disappear. It could not. The things she had done, the lies she had told, the manufactured foundation of her relationship with Caspian, these were not problems that love alone could solve. They were fractures that required time and honesty, and the willingness to sit in discomfort without reaching for easy resolution. They started over, not from scratch. You could not erase 3 years of shared history, even history built on deception, but they started from a new place. A place where every conversation began with the understanding that truth was not optional and trust was not assumed. It was harder than either of them expected. There were nights when Caspian looked at her across the dinner table and wondered which version of Evany was sitting there, the trained operative, or the woman who spilled wine on his couch, the person Rosalind built, or the person who emerged when the building stopped. There were nights when Evany watched him read to Stellan and felt the weight of every moment she had stolen from him. 2 years of first steps and first words and first everything, taken not by malice, but by the particular cruelty of impossible choices. They argued about the past, about decisions made without consent, about the fundamental question of whether a relationship that began as an operation could become something legitimate. They also laughed about Stellan's increasingly complex theories regarding Professor's academic career, about Gerald the Star, about the fact that Caspian was, as Evany had always claimed, genuinely terrible at block towers. Slowly, unevenly, with setbacks and breakthroughs that followed no predictable pattern, they built something. Not the something Rosalind had designed, not the something Genevieve would have approved, something messier, more honest, held together not by manufactured compatibility, but by the daily choice to stay in the room when staying was harder than leaving. One evening, 6 months after the cottage on Whidbey Island, Caspian came home to find Stellan asleep on the couch. Professor was tucked under his arm. His mouth was open. His breathing was slow and even, and carried the absolute peace of a child who felt safe enough to surrender consciousness completely. Evany sat on the floor beside the couch, her back against the cushions, reading a book she would never finish, because she kept looking up at Stellan instead of at the pages. Caspian set down his briefcase, took off his coat, sat on the floor beside her. He built a tower today, Evany said quietly. 14 blocks, his personal record. He said Professor would have gone higher, but the structural integrity was compromised. Those are not the words of a 2-year-old. He is nearly 3 now, and he has been spending a lot of time with Marcus, who apparently thinks toddlers need to understand engineering principles. Caspian smiled, leaned his head back against the couch, felt the warmth of his sleeping son radiating through the cushions behind him. Evany. Yes. You never answered my question. She turned to look at him. Which question? Whether it was enough, what I said at the hospital, about building something real. She was quiet for a moment. The book lay forgotten in her lap. The room was dark except for a lamp in the corner that cast everything in warm amber light. It was not enough, she said. His chest tightened. It was not enough because words are never enough, speeches are never enough, promises made in hospital parking lots and warehouse doorways are never enough. She reached for his hand. But this is, sitting on the floor, watching him sleep, knowing that tomorrow he will wake up and want scrambled eggs and insist that Professor needs coffee even though Professor is a stuffed elephant and does not have a digestive system. She squeezed his fingers. This ordinary, boring, miraculous life we are building one day at a time, this is enough. Caspian squeezed back. Above them, Stellan shifted in his sleep, murmured something about Gerald, pulled Professor closer. Outside, the Seattle sky held no visible stars. Too many clouds, too much city light, the kind of sky that made you forget stars existed at all. But Stellan knew where they were. He had named them, mapped them, claimed them as his own. They were always there, even when you could not see them, especially then. If this story moved you, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Tell me where you are watching from today. And if you have not subscribed yet, you already know what to do. That button is right there. Hit it. Because stories like this one do not come around often, and the next one is already in the works. Thank you for being here, every single one of you. I will see you in the next one.